talk about getting empathy for our customers. We also need to do that with our internal partners and say, what are their goals? What are they doing? How do they do their work?
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Hey, CX Passport listeners. Today's guest is Mike Kendall, and this one's a bit of a reunion. Mike and I go way back to our days driving customer experience at Capital One in Plano. We've stayed in touch ever since, and it's been kind of fun to watch his path wind through both CX and product strategy. Mike's got this unique perspective. He doesn't just sit in one camp. He understands how CX and product both shape customer experience, and how those two worlds don't always talk to each other the way they should. Now, we could talk shop all day, but I want to touch on something else. Mike's a drummer, and he recently got the kind of invitation most of us only dream about: traveling to Spain to play with a band. Y'all know I'm going to ask about that. Mike, welcome to CX Passport.
Pleasure to be here, Rick. And as always, good to chat with you, whether it's over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. It's good to do it a little more publicly today.
That's right. I would imagine if some of our past conversations had the record button hit on them, we would have had some interesting things to share. So hopefully today, and not even just hopefully, I know today it will be exactly the same. Let's talk about that, because we kind of talked about, or I mentioned in the intro, the different teams, the different roles. The reality is customers just don't care about internal labels, internal roles. To the customer, experience is experience. Product plays a role, CX plays a role. All right. So why do those teams so often act like they're on separate planets?
Yeah, I've been kind of noticing this more recently because I've been helping out organize a couple meetups here locally, and one's a product management group and the other's a customer experience group. And the energy and the vibe is just so different between those two camps. And it got me thinking about kind of my days in corporate. And I'm not sure it's just unique to those two functions, right? I think the idea of cross-functional collaboration, really managing an end-to-end experience or a journey across multiple silos, if you will, is pretty rare. There's not a lot of companies that have really mastered that. And there's a lot going on in product right now with AI, with the focus on product management as a discipline. And CX has been through a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I think personally, I was kind of there at the dawning beginning of it, date myself a little bit, but it's changed a lot. And I think there's more despair maybe from the CX folks than the product folks, even though there's still a lot of turmoil in both.
I actually want to go back to that. I want to ask about that. Why one side, because it's all experience to the customer, why one side's so high, one side's so low. I want to get a little deeper into just the why. Why are these worlds so separate?
Yeah. Often they're reporting up through different groups, right? I think there's been a lot of technology emerging. I remember back at Capital One years ago when we were there, one of the things I got asked in the interview process was kind of what my thought was on technology. And at that time, and it's even more true now, I felt like every company is a software company, and Capital One should be a software company that happens to be a bank, or you could be a software company that happens... They would frequently say
that, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
right?
and you could be a software company that happens to build planes, or you name it, or sells pizzas. And I'm not sure, this is my opinion, that the CX profession came out of a native technology sort of mindset or skill capability, whereas a lot of the product managers I interact with, they came up as coders or software engineers, or they have a sort of a deep passion and skill set there. And so I think that could be a struggle if you're not comfortable with the technology. CX more than ever now, whether it's chat bots or just using data analytics to figure out what's going on with vast amounts of customer interactions, has become a technology function. And so I think there's maybe just a distinctive there of who's in those functions, where they report up to, I always saw it more as an air traffic controller. Like my role is to go bring those silos together
Yeah,
and
right.
to not be the one that waits until product comes to me and says, "Hey, can you help us fix something we missed in product design?"
Mike, some of what you're describing, I almost have this sort of cool kids vibe when I'm listening to what you're saying of like,
Yeah.
products, the cool kids, the CX guys are not the cool kids. And one knows the technology. The other one's still dealing with flip charts and number 2 pencils. And I realize that's a gross exaggeration. It really is. Let's talk about just the reality though, right now of what you said. And that is, one side is feeling all high. Product is on a high. When you talk to those groups, when you're sitting in those networking groups, there's a buzz there. And every group's going to have its problems and its challenges.
Sure.
It's just when you speak inside of the CX community, you hear a lot more doom and gloom. Why do you think those perspectives, when it's ultimately about the experience the customer receives, why do you think there's such a difference in perspectives between those groups right now?
Yeah, it's funny because when I way back in my career at Citigroup, before CX was even a thing, we were doing it, and it was kind of me just getting frustrated that hey, we're rolling out all these new processes and products, and we're not talking to customers about it. Why don't we go listen to customers and just start doing it? And I think over that time frame till now, the definition of CX has radically shifted and is even different between companies. And so
Sure.
there's maybe a bit of an identity crisis that that the CX profession has suffered over the last few years. And I think there's also maybe a role definition. I've never felt like it was something that, well, here's a job description, go do it. Like most jobs, it was more about, hey, I need to go build relationships across multiple parts, multiple disciplines in the company, so that there's some trust and respect there. I need to try to come up with shared goals, even though that may be difficult because I'm not able to enforce it with the club, but can say, hey, can we all agree based on data, based on our mission, that we're all going to work towards the same thing and be accountable to each other for that. And then what I would call maybe repeatable operating mechanisms. And this may not be functional. We did this at Intuit and say, hey, I'm just going to go try to get one person from each discipline and say, could we get together every week or every month and say, let's set some goals together. And maybe we go to the senior leaders and say, here's the budget we need together. Here's the outcomes we need. And here are the goals we want to set. And really see them more as our investors and our board of directors. And we're really running this horizontal kind of company.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport. Leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
If we've got these two groups and they are somewhat different with different missions at times, but really ultimately focused on the customer, one's high, one's low, all the things we just said. You alluded to it a bit of, well, I went out and built the relationships. What would you say to someone who's in a customer experience role? Let's say that they're in that side of the camp. And longtime listeners know I hate these labels, but let's just say that the CX side of the house.
Yeah.
What do you say to them about how they can bridge that gap between product and CX? What needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not comfortable with I remember, gosh, back in the day, my first job out of college, I was like, I don't know, I don't understand any of this stuff, the technical jargon. What are they doing? I'm like, hey, can I just spend two weeks in the call center listening to calls, or can I hang out with you as you go call on customers and do sales pitches, or you're coding something today. Can I sit there and watch you and ask you questions? And just really getting deep into the technical side of it so that they don't feel like you're sort of coming in and trying to, change up their sandbox. I just got to get my hands dirty and go out there and learn what's going on. How do we make money? How do we build things and become a part of it? So you're not just, really narrow in your scope.
Yeah. Is there something unique to the CX world that, and I'll say we, because I've been in that world, that we historically have felt somewhat aloof or separate or away from some of that, I don't need to know all that. Because what you're suggesting is, no, you need to. So I would imagine that there's been a history of, it's not important to me. Why would that
I don't
be?
know that it's unique to CX, right? I started my career in HR, and most of us in HR didn't really know a lot about what was going on in the groups we're recruiting for or doing employee relations for.
Right.
If I'm in marketing, I may not understand how people are coding software. So I think that's just kind of human nature, that you stay in your comfort zone.
Okay.
And it's a little, you just kind of have to challenge yourself or your team to say, how are we going to stay? We talk about a lot getting empathy for our customers and trying to understand their unmet needs as a CX person. But we also need to do that with our internal partners in other functions and say, what are their goals? What are they doing? How do they do their work? And that helps us. If we're going to be the air traffic controller, it kind of helps to understand aviation and what pilots are doing and what the ground crews are doing.
Yeah. I would say so.
Yeah.
It's not a secret. And clearly, I don't know if maybe something was just put in my coffee this morning, that there's been some challenges with CX proving its value. I think some of why product has had its highs and CX has perhaps kind of some doldrums right now is the product ships product, right? There's a result. Boom. Now you can discuss the value of that product, but regardless, there is product that is being shipped.
Yeah.
When it comes to CX, though, a lot of times, a lot of us have gone into it with this approach of, oh, please let me do X, Y, and Z versus here's what I did.
Yeah.
How can CX professionals really step into more confident, results-focused positions?
Yeah, I think back to what I just said about how do we make money first, right?
Yeah.
Really getting under the hood and saying what drives this. I now in the consulting world, sometimes it's like unwrapping an onion of like, why is this organization behaving the way they are? And why aren't they doing this? Or why are they doing this? And the more you ask why and dig deeper, you start to realize, I remember working for a startup and they brought me in to kind of improve quality. We had a lot of issues in the call center and with consistent service. And so I'm going about it and we're doing great. And then pretty soon you realize, oh, the C-suite is trying to clean this thing up because they want to do an IPO or they want to do an equity transaction. I'm like, oh, that's a different thing than just let's make this good for the long term. They wanted to have an exit within 4 years. So knowing that makes a big difference in how you approach your work. So I think really trying to understand what's most important to the senior leaders, to the extent you can figure that out.
Right.
And then what are you uniquely as a CX leader? What are you uniquely qualified to bring to the table that can meet those needs?
Yeah.
And then finding a way to work cross-functionally towards that aim and really seeing that your benefactors, if you will, are the C-suite. They've brought CX in or created it or budgeted for it for a specific purpose, and they don't always articulate that. So you have to get out the Ouija board sometimes and try to figure out what is the purpose. There's a reference. You can put a crawler below that for people that don't know what that is.
So there'll be a link in the show notes to where one can buy their devil game. But sure,
yes, right. I haven't worked for a company that literally had a Ouija board, but there were some meetings that could have been seances, I suppose.
Light a candle, drop the blinds, let's hold some hands and figure out what to do. Yeah, you're reminding me of something that Bill Stakos said in his episode. And he talked about one of the first documents that any role, and particularly CX people, is the business strategy document. And I realize there can be some marketing element in that as well, but really the point is getting into what is the business's strategy, because your point of IPO has a much different need for quality cleanup than we need to build a sustainable, not just put some, not just exit our apartment with some spackle in the holes on the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes there's not only a business strategy, but there's personal strategies. I remember working at one company, we had 18 C-suite members, and
Good
it was
gravy.
yeah, it was a big company, but it was a big C-suite, maybe too big. But there was a bell curve of objectives, if you will, that were not stated in any documents, and you had to kind of get to know them or know people that knew them and figure that out and say, okay, I have my sort of people that are passionate about what I'm doing and what CX is doing. I have my resistors, constant complainers, and sort of the malleable middle. And I've got to create maybe my, stealthy supporter board of people that I know are on board with this, and then
Right.
go there. And Humana, for example, when I was there, we didn't have a goal anywhere to say, let's build a CX innovation lab. But within 6 months, we had millions of dollars of funding and I think 80 people in that function, mainly because we figured out what was the most important to them at that time. We put together one small, scrappy team to work in this new way that delivered on something, and that got the attention of the senior leaders. They're like, hey, we want more of that. So it may not always be kind of linear top down. It may have to be a little bit of judoing your way through the organization.
I like that. And I think that's an important, guide, story, inspiration for those in the CX world is don't necessarily assume it's in your remit. Just create the value and suddenly it will become suddenly.
And you'll get promoted,
suddenly,
or
right?
you'll get promoted or you'll get fired.
Yeah.
So, this is not a job for the weak of heart, right?
Boy, it's not. All right. Enough business talk because I can't wait any longer. When you told me, I knew you were a drummer, but then when you told me, oh yeah, I was in Spain touring with a band, that is ridiculously cool. Tell me about that. What are some tales from the road?
Yeah, I'd never been to Spain, and it's kind of always been on my list. And so when this opportunity came up, I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. And so it's a group of professional musicians that gets together every other year and does this trip. And so they had a need and plugged me in, fortunately. And so we were over there for a couple weeks. We played 7 shows all outside during an epic heat wave. Which was interesting. And you thought Texas was hot. Well, try playing a 3-hour show.
No kidding.
Outside.
And we have air conditioning, right? When you get done with your hotel, you probably didn't have that as often.
Yeah, buses, hotel. Yeah, forget about it. It's and typical American. I'm like, why isn't the air conditioning here? But
because we've
and
never
of course,
had
I'm the only one sweating, right? But the venues were insane, right? So we played at a 2,000-year-old castle overlooking the Mediterranean.
Wow.
We played in a hill town. I think it dated back to 500 BC. That was at one time, it was ruled by a lot of different people, but it was what caught my eye was it was the capital of the Visigoth Empire.
Wow.
At one point. And then another place was a UNESCO World Heritage Site that was the largest collection of palm trees, I think 200,000 palm trees. And so we're outside just surrounded at sunset by palm trees. It was really amazing.
Mike, that sounds absolutely delightful. You mentioned the road trips and the air conditioning and all that. Well, just even getting to Spain can be a bit of a haul for those of us from the U.S., right? So it can be nice to stop down in the lounge, and that's what we're going to do here. A little change of pace. We'll stop down here in the first class lounge. We'll move quickly and have a little bit of fun here. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Gosh, we try to go pretty regularly to this place called the Kohala Coast, which is on Hawaii Island, the big island of Hawaii. And it's not Honolulu or Maui. I always called Maui Plano on the Pacific because I see the same people I see here and a lot of the same restaurants. But this is pretty raw. It's lava fields and desert. And if you drive over to the other side of the island, then you've got the typical waterfalls and jungles and all that, but just really nice. Good place to get away and enjoy being remote.
Well, and actually to get the true sense of being remote, as opposed to, as you say, the plane of Hawaii. What about the other way? What's a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
We really were trying to get to Japan for the Olympics. We'd not been to Japan, not been to the Olympics, so we're definitely still trying to get back to Japan at some point. We haven't really done that yet.
Forgive my interruption of just expression. It is stunning. Listeners, regular listeners, you know how often Japan comes up. And every time I say this, go get there quickly because it is an amazing place. I can see why it would be on your list. One of the things that I loved about Japan is the phenomenal food and range of food, right? We may think it's narrow, but it's range. In that vein, what's a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Oh my gosh. What's I guess fresh on my mind, right, from the Spain trip. We were entertained by our host. This was and one thing I didn't mention is this trip was sponsored by a local group that dates itself back to 1914. They were like the original first Protestant organization in Spain. So there was a lot of spiritual missional component to this thing. But one of the groups, after one of our shows, we walked about a mile and we ended up in the edge of town in the backyard of a house with two long tables. It looked just like you'd see on the Food Network. And these guys with T-shirts on come running out with the most large paella pan you've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
And they had 3 different varieties of paella, and it was just amazing. So sign me up for paella. And when it's hot, which it was when we were there, a good glass of sangria with some ice, American style ice. Set that up too.
That sounds absolutely delightful. And I love me some paella, so I'm definitely with you. What on the other side of this is something you were forced to eat growing up, but you hated as a kid?
Yeah, I had a standoff. I still remember it clearly. I must have been 4 or 5 when I was in the kitchen, and my mom says, "Eat your Brussels sprouts," and I'm like, not eating my Brussels sprouts. And that was in the day when you didn't put sugar and bacon and all that. They were just plain Brussels sprouts. And so it's like 8:00. She's turning the light off, and I'm sitting there, and maybe that's the resolve you need to be a CX leader, right? You're like, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not eating my Brussels sprouts.
Oh my gosh. I can assure you, one, I agree with you on the Brussels sprouts, and I can assure you I've never heard anyone equate Brussels sprout resistance to customer experience skill set. I always get something new.
We've got a book we can write there.
I'm not amplifying Brussels sprouts. No, that book is all yours. Sadly, it's time for us to leave the lounge. Mike, what is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
Yeah, I had to pivot on this one because I'm going to give you 2 because they go together. But there's a little doodad I bought last year called iFly, which you plug into the headphone jack on the plane, and it broadcasts Wi-Fi to or Bluetooth to your AirPods. So you can watch the TV on the plane on these long flights without having to wear headphones, or you've got some freedom. And so that's kind of one of my go-to travel tech.
Mike, I could have used that on our family just took a trip to Iceland, and I was surprised that Iceland Air did not have the bring your own device option, and it was hardwired headphone option for all of their in-flight entertainment. So if you didn't have wired headphones, which most of us don't, you either had to buy theirs or just go without. Yeah. And your iFly suggestion is one that I'm going to put in my list going forward.
Don't forget to charge it though, or you will be 8 hours on the plane.
Well, let me tell you what my number one item is, and that's the power pack. I have found myself never leaving home without the power pack. I want to go back to CX, and folks listening to this may think, good gravy, Rick, really, what happened to you? Did you not get sleep last night? Are you crabby? It's just there's so much negativity that surrounds customer experience that I'm trying to understand it to some degree. And I've even heard people saying that the brand, CX, customer experience, the brand is dead. Yeah. What's your perspective? Is it just evolving, or are we actually watching the end of something?
Back in the day when we sort of started first coining the term CX, I remember at least we always used to say, hey, if we do our jobs well, there won't be a need for our department, and it'll go away and everything will be glorious. And I think that was a little bit naive, because I'm not sure we did our jobs well and the department never did go away. But it's a bit of a pendulum, right? You're going to have companies that swing to shareholder value focus, to customer focus, to employee focus. And ideally, you've got some kind of balance, but usually there's a skew there. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's the whole idea of identifying it for your own company, for yourself, and making it what it needs to be in that moment, and not letting somebody else define it. Work with the most senior leaders you can to say, hey, what are we trying to solve for here? What's important? How are we doing? What are the priorities for improvement? And let's get clear on that and make sure that, I remember I had a boss at Citi that said 80% of your job is doing your job and 20% is telling people what you're doing. And so you had to be your own PR team, right? And say, people need to know who you are, why you're there, and how you're there to help them, and then earn that right. So they're coming to you and asking for help as opposed to you having to knock on their door.
You said something about it. The company can have the pendulum shift to shareholder value, to customer, to employee. I think there's an element of the CXer's role is to help bridge that to where it's not so much of a swing in the pendulum, but actually that those are kind of coming together. How can a CXer do that? How can a CXer make it where it's not a distinction between the three, but actually it's something that delivers on all three?
Yeah, I led strategic planning years ago at a big bank, and we literally had like a day and a half argument with the C-suite over why our company existed, and we'd been around like 100 years. But I think it's clear mission. What is the purpose of the company? And a lot of companies don't get that, right? And we've seen some of our own companies, one local airline I won't mention the name of, lost the mission, right? They lost the plot.
Preach. I've mentioned them.
Yeah, right. And so, why do you exist? Is it to enrich the hedge fund owners, or is it to deliver, solve a problem in society, or create a new technology that transforms the world? What is that? And can you get some alignment on that? And that's a hard job to put on a CX leader, but it really, it helps bridge that gap if you have it, or if you can clarify it to say, hey, we're here for this purpose. And, in the short term, we're going to do this. The long term, we're going to do that. But what are those methods, mindsets, and structures you can put in place to reinforce that mission?
Yeah. I like that. Well, let's take that and let's almost pivot that to the next generation, if you will. So you and I, God willing, I like the way Prof G says it. We're on the back nine of our careers, right? We see the end closer than we see the beginning.
The way I play golf, I'll never get off the back.
Yeah, I know. I like his analogy, but I don't live his analogy, given how, like you, how poorly I play golf as well. What would you say to someone, let's say it's a younger family member, just someone you're mentoring early in their career that they want to do something in customer experience? What do you say to them to say, here's what you need to equip yourself with to make sure you have a successful career in this space?
Yeah. I have she's 25 now, year old niece that, we've kind of taken a vested interest in her career, and she, wisely or not, chose not to go down the CX path. She's a PhD student in neuroscience, if you can imagine.
Well, there's a little bit of linkage, neuroscience, yes, but yes, much different.
Yeah, having a psychology background might not be a bad idea for a CX person, but I think what I would mentor a young person saying, "Hey, I want to get into this," is why. Ask the why question, and if they respond with a lot of passion and gusto and say, "Hey, here's why I want to do this," I think we should deliver value for customers. We should help grow the business. We should help create shareholder value, and I'm on fire to do that. And I said, go boldly and do it. Find your passion, your coalition of the passionate, and make it happen.
Yeah.
If I hear, hey, I just need a job and need to pay my rent, then no disparaging another profession, but maybe accounting or finance or something a little more stable might be a good idea for you.
Some darts being thrown at some other industries. I like that.
We need those folks, but it's a different animal, right? It's your risk tolerance of, I'm going to get bloodied along the way and be the pioneer if I'm in CX versus, hey, I double entry accounting's been around for 4,000 years. CX is not even in its adolescence yet. So.
No one says to the C-suite, hey, we're really not sure the value of accounting, right? So this is established. Right. I get the point.
Yeah.
And I like that. Just focus on the why, right? And that's something we hear almost as a cliche at this point, but it's an important reminder that if you're doing this and you intend to be successful in that career, well, understanding why you're doing it is so valuable. Mike, this has been a nice conversation. I've enjoyed, one, just catching up with you. It's always good, and I'm glad we got to hit record while we were doing that. If folks wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, your approach to customer experience, your approach to product, your approach to strategy, what's the best way for them to get to know more?
Absolutely. Yeah. Check out my website, thecustomerlab.com, or send me an email at mike@thecustomerlab.com.
All right. I will get all of that into the show notes. Yeah, Mike, it was a delightful treat today, along with learning all sorts of great things about product and CX and how we can actually get these groups to work together. That drumming trip in Spain still just knocks me off my seat when I think about how cool that is. So I'm glad
I can
that
send you a video if you really want to go deep on it.
Hey, I'm intrigued. This has been the kind of conversation that I love to have on CX Passport, and I know the audience loved it as well. Mike, thank you for being on CX Passport.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.